Hi, I'm Greg. I'm the lead singer for Lipstick.
And I'm Steve. I'm the bassist from Lipstick.
And welcome to the Lipstick panel. Today on the Lipstick panel, we're finally going to talk about a band that we never mention on this podcast, except mention on pretty much every episode we do. We are talking about Thin Lizzy.
You might have vaguely heard of them
before. If you've listened to our podcast before, you've probably heard me mention them on every episode, no matter how inappropriate or unrelated to the topic we're discussing at hand. One of my all-time favorite bands, breaking into the top 3, so I'm really excited to talk about Thin Lizzy and what many consider to be their best album, their breakthrough album, Jailbreak.
Their jailbreakthrough album, as it were.
Yeah, their jailbreakthrough album. We have got some amazing guests on our show today. We've got the podcast medium's breakout star, Chris L. from Pod of Thunder, joining us. Welcome, Chris.
That's what they tell me.
We've got Brad Page from I'm in Love with That Song podcast, my favorite bite-sized podcast out there. Brad, welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
And we've got another millennial Steve joining us for the 500th episode. We've got Mr. Steve Edwards. Welcome, Steve.
Hi, hello. But you said we have some terrific guests. Who are the terrific guests? I'm waiting.
Hey, wait a minute.
See, I heard millennial Steven thought he was a Yu-Gi-Oh card, and now I'm just disappointed.
Nobody knows what you're talking about with that reference. So.
I mean, I understand that reference, but also, I'm legitimately friends with one of the guys from Yu-Gi-Oh! And saw the movie in theaters with the guy, so...
Do you brag much? Oh my gosh.
It was relevant to the discussion. That's how I know what Yu-Gi-Oh! Is, because I know a dude from the show.
Alright.
That's relevant to the discussion.
So, I take it that, based off your comment, that the other two gentlemen we're speaking with are not millennials?
No, we've got a division. We've got a couple youngsters, we've got a couple people who were around when this album originally came out, and you've got me right in the middle where I'm younger than both you guys, but I probably have more philosophical views in common with our more distinguished guests on this episode.
When this album came out, Greg was just a twinkle in his, grandfather's postman's eye.
Right.
What year did this record come out?
76?
Yes, sir.
I got the CD right in front of me. Yeah.
One of two Thin Lizzy albums come out that year, kind of similar to how Kiss released 2 albums in 1976.
That was so common back then, the churn of albums from bands. It's amazing, really. Not uncommon for bands to put out 2 albums a year, plus compilations and live albums in there. These days, you're lucky if you get one every 5 years.
Yeah. Well, honestly, though, it's starting to change to go back to that. I mean, Drake he's been putting out a couple albums a year for several years now, and his last record had almost 30 tracks or something like that.
Yeah.
So it is starting to change a little bit. I think especially you're going to see that more with hip-hop or anything where you don't have to go into a recording studio and record anything extensively, that you can... you can make most of your music inside of the box, and then you can record your vocals so you can churn it out a little bit faster.
Although with the mixtapes and things like that, hip-hop has been doing that for some time, really.
I will say, as someone who grew up appreciating mainly 70s and 80s rock acts as my bread and butter, it is frustrating to me as an artist because I really wanted to do that breakneck pace of an album or 2 albums a year, but... it's just not really feasible in this market, especially as an independent act with a constantly rotating lineup of musicians. So it is frustrating because that's what I desire the goal to be, and it's unfortunately not as feasible. But Steve and I are talking about moving more towards a singles-based thing, partly inspired by listening to Chris L. say that albums aren't really a necessity anymore. Everyone consumes a la carte. So we're getting ready this year to start releasing a steady stream of singles. And I think that's going to be artistically satisfying, at least on our end.
That's what everything is now. I mean, people still put out records, but nobody buys physical copies of anything anymore. I'm not talking about the niche market of LPs and that kind of stuff, but for the most part, people are going to, even if you put out an album, they're not going to listen to the whole thing anyway. That's just how the digital age is.
I like how many people are still surprised at cassettes being a thing now. You'll talk to usually musicians who are why aren't people just making CDs? Why are they making cassettes? It's well, cassettes are cheaper, and it's entirely just a token. You buy the whatever physical media so that you can support the band and say you bought the physical media, but you're just listening to it on Spotify.
Now, admittedly, as interesting as this discussion is, I don't care. I want to talk about Thin Lizzy because I fucking love this band and they're amazing, and I'm so hyped and pumped to talk about Thin Lizzy.
On cassette?
Man, whatever. This band is great on any medium. Shoot, they're even great on 8-track. I don't care. This is, like, such a brilliant band. It's hard to wrap my thoughts around them. Typically at the start of our episodes, for first-time listeners, we all go around the panel, talk about our history with the band and the album in particular. I have so much to say, and I'm so pumped, but I kind of want to go last. Just because I love this band so much. So how about we start with the younger kids, then we move on to Brad and Chris, and then we'll close out with me. So Steve Edwards, what is your experience with...
You want me to go first?
Yes, I want you to go first.
You're the youngest person besides Greg.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I've heard the name Thin Lizzy before. And
mainly because of me.
No, I heard... So I'm a big fan of the movie Once. And Once came out,
and they have the Phil Lynott statue in the movie, and they have the Thin Lizzy cover band on the street.
There's the cover band. That's the reason because I
got so pumped. He
comes up to him and he was like saying, "I want a band. Like, will you be my backing band?" And they're like, "Oh, we just do Thin Lizzy songs." I was like, I think I've heard that name before. So that was the first time the name stuck with me, and I've heard a couple of their songs that I didn't know that was them. And I've heard the name, and as of a couple of days ago, it was the first time I ever listened to more than their couple of big hit songs. So that's my history.
So coming in fresh, Stephen Smith, what is your history with Thin Lizzy other than hearing them in my car all the damn time?
Right, so I've been listening to Greg extol the greatness of Thin Lizzy for about 6 years now. I was vaguely familiar with them. I knew their singles, and then I think... I told my classic rock station on Pandora to play some more Thin Lizzy, and there's a couple songs that pop up on rotation there every once in a while. Plus, Greg dragged me to see Black Star Riders when they were in town, a.k.a. Thin Lizzy Part 2, this time without Phil. But yeah, I'd never actually sat down and intentionally listened all the way through an album before, just like half of it when Greg and I go out to get burritos kind of thing. And then I listened to it a couple times this week.
And so, Brad, how about you? What's your history with Thin Lizzy and this album in particular, if you have a particular history with it?
My first exposure to Thin Lizzy, other than, like everyone else, the songs were on the radio, but it was basically Boys Are Back in Town and Jailbreak. But when the Live and Dangerous album came out in 1978...
Damn classic.
A friend of mine, who we grew up together, gave it to me for Christmas. And I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to it, but it's one of those things that over the years, as I would go back to it, it's become one of my all-time favorite live records. And from there, I dug back into their catalog and forward from there as well. And it's just a band with a fascinating history, a tortured history with guitar players. Phil was a really interesting guy. But it was through the Live and Dangerous album that I came into Thin Lizzy.
And Chris L., how about you? I know you and I are big appreciators of Thin Lizzy, so I would love to hear your story of the band.
Well, I grew up in Detroit, and on the local PBS station, Channel 56, back on your old UHF dial, on the television set, they would have one of the local album rock radio stations, WLLZ, had a late night kind of video show going on, which was pre-MTV. As we know, bands were putting out video clips before MTV, and you never really saw them very often, but radio station had this show on the PBS station, and one week they showed the live video of Rosalie, which pretty sure it was to promote Live and Dangerous, just a live compilation of video live video footage with the live and dangerous version of Rosalie. Of course, it's that song's got the Detroit connection because it's the Bob Seger cover. And I just remember looking at these guys and thinking, like, this is the coolest bunch of guys I think I've ever seen. And just the music drew me in instantly, and I just started consuming the albums. Like our other guest said, I went back in time and then forward in time, and then started following them, as albums kept coming out and staying current with it. So,
and these guys did look like rock stars. Holy crap! Especially Robertson and Gorham, and those two guys, 70s guitar rock gods to the T.
Yes, absolutely. The visual element, while not as over the top as obviously Kiss or an Alice Cooper or a band like that. I mean, these guys just had the swagger in spades, and
right.
It just drew me in instantly.
No quote unquote costumes or 7-inch heels, but just these guys look like friggin' rock stars.
They looked really cool. They had a great fashion sense, and just was a band that just epitomized a cool looking rock band. So,
yes, absolutely.
So I'll go ahead and go next. So Thin Lizzy, as I mentioned, is one of my all-time favorite bands, and there's sort of two ways I found that most people discover bands. They'll find a band through like a friend recommendation, and then your relationship with the band is largely based upon that friendship and the two of you feeding each other's fandom. So if you find another Kiss fan, the two of you will feed each other's fandom of Kiss, and you'll have all the conversations about Kiss, and that'll increase your appreciation of the band. And then sometimes you'll just find a band completely on accident on your own, and that'll give you like an extra appreciation where you're the one, showing your friends that band, like, man, check this out. And for me, Thin Lizzy was kind of an accidental discovery. I mean, I obviously knew The Boys Are Back in Town, Jailbreak, and Whiskey in the Jar, because pretty much everyone knows those tunes. But just one night, I was just browsing through this website, Sleaze Rocks, which I've done some writing for, and they used to have a music video section where they just had a bunch of links to YouTube videos of all these 70s and 80s hard rock bands. And there was, and I was vaguely familiar with, the name Thin Lizzy, and I saw they only had one Thin Lizzy video on the site at the time, and it was for Dedication. And just something about the song title fascinated me, so I checked it out, and it was love at first listen. I didn't know that it was a song that Phil had recorded shortly before he died, and that the band finished up after his death. I just knew I felt intense emotion and power from the piece, and I was just blown away instantly. I thought the band looked cool. I thought Phil was a fascinating frontman, and I was like, I need to buy a CD from this band as quickly as possible because it was so good. And so the first Thin Lizzy CD I bought was Dedication because it had that song on there, and I checked out the catalog and thought, okay, probably this greatest hits is a good way to start, because I like to justify my purchases in my head, so I knew if I bought all those songs first, it wouldn't feel like I was buying a CD just for one song. So, like, as I went and collected the rest of the catalog, that would be the only new track, so it made more sense to start with that. So I bought that CD. At the same time, I bought a Stryper Greatest Hits CD. I enjoyed both bands, and I still liked Stryper, but I obviously became a much bigger Thin Lizzy fan than a Stryper fan. And Thin Lizzy was a band I could show to my friends in high school and consistently impress them with the lyricism, the musicality, the swagger, the stage presence. Like, there was a band where
The lack of yellow spandex.
Like, a lot of the bands I would show my friends in high school, they were like, this is shit. Why do you listen to this? And then Thin Lizzy would be the band that would consistently impress my fans. Like, whoa, this is actually, like, pretty good. I'm surprised you listen to this, Greg. I'm like, I listen to good music. But, like, Don't Believe a Word was a song I would always point my friends to, and Waiting for an Alibi, and just I would show my friends these songs, and, like, blown away consistently by this band that, tragically only has like a couple well-known hits to the general listening populace, but has a fantastic catalog. And for the longest time, my top 3 bands were the Beatles, the collective works of Jim Steinman, and then Kiss was number 3. And then Thin Lizzy just kept creeping up in the rankings, and I just never get bored with them, never get tired of them. And then they finally one day just overturned Kiss and managed to get into the top 3. And given the general stranglehold that Kiss has on the psyche of its fans, I was kind of impressed that just Thin Lizzy, through sheer force of quality of catalog, was able to overtake them for me. And so I
threw off the Kool-Aid.
You threw off the Kool-Aid. But I love this band. I love pretty much the entire catalog from the 3rd album onwards. I know a lot of people don't like the Snowy White stuff as much, or don't like the John Sykes stuff, but I think everything from Vagabonds from the Western World up to Thunder and Lightning and all the B-sides and stuff in between, just fantastic, A-plus material. Just adore this band, adore the entire catalog. This isn't my favorite Lizzy album, but I think it's a really good representation of a lot of the different sides of the band. I personally think Black Rose is a better album, and I do like Vagabonds quite a bit. I think that's a really underrated one, but yeah, this is a great album by a great band, and I'm super pumped. I love it. All the hype.
All the hype that your money can buy.
So yeah, you guys just ready to dive right in and get into this ranking?
Let's do it.
All right. So coming in as the least best song on Jailbreak, as voted by the panel, one of my favorite Thin Lizzy songs, Running Back. Songs like this are the reason I love Thin Lizzy as much as I do. We've mentioned this on previous episodes, but I like bands with different layers and nuances to their sound. And the thing that really works about Thin Lizzy, for me, the band is Phil Lynott. Like, he is 100% the main reason I'm a fan of the band. I love the different guitar players, and I love the different styles they bring to the band. But for me, Phil is the heart and soul of Thin Lizzy. And he's just a brilliant lyricist, a brilliant singer, brilliant songwriter. And what really works with Phil for me is the way that he has the sort of tough guy, with a soft side persona. And so, he can play the role of the badass rocker with swagger, but can also get really tender and sincere and really vulnerable. And, the lyricism of this song is, for me, just brilliant because it's, him playing the role as a rock star saying, I make my money singing songs about you. It's my claim to fame. And, he is obviously successful and doing well musically, but there's still the heartbreak of not being able to get back with this woman he loves. And
it's a pretty good lyric.
I think it's a brilliant lyric. I love the hooks. I love a good shuffle in rock music, and so hey, it's a shuffle, so I'm digging the groove of it. I like the keyboard on it. For me, this is like one of the reasons I love this band so much is songs like this, where I can dive into the lyrics and I can feel the emotion and sincerity. Like, for me, Phil Lynott is the perfect rock star. He has everything that I want from a front man, from a writer. Like, he just knocks it out of the park on all levels. And there's only one real lyric clunker in the catalog from Vagabonds on, and that's Sha-La-La, where he says, be my jelly roll. Like, otherwise, like, he knocks it out of the park consistently.
What do you have against jelly rolls?
I think it's a lame lyric. I just think it's just kind of dumb. But, I mean,
He's really more of a Boston cream guy himself.
Yeah, I'm really more of a Boston cream guy.
Oh, that's hot. Okay.
Yeah, like, to me, seeing the
Not
song
that kind
rank
of
so
Boston
low is a bit heartbreaking, because, like, this is one of the songs I think of why I love Thin Lizzy, and just everything about it is perfection to me.
So where did you have it on your list?
I gave it 6 points out of a possible 9. I mean, it's a very difficult album to rank because these are all great tunes.
Right.
And so there's a couple that are ranked above it that I would greatly disagree on. But I mean, this is one of these defining songs of the band for me, where like this would be a song I would play to someone like, check out this band. See, stuff I listen to actually has good lyrics. Like to me, this is a perfect song.
My counter to that is I just thought it was boring. That's really it.
Ouch!
Wow, I mean, you called it, Greg. You said, "Oh man, both the Steves are going to think this song is boring and slow and a ballad." And you're half right.
Yeah.
Look, you guys just don't like shuffles.
I don't think that. I think I just like interesting things that happen, and it was lacking that. I mean, there's all their songs are. For my take on this on the album, you know, it's kind of the same formula, and they've got the solo in there, which is all cool and all, but this one just didn't do much.
Yeah.
That's why I put it second to last for me. It just doesn't really do anything.
But I would say, like, these songs, I think each song on this album is a distinct experience and isn't necessarily following a formula, unless you consider verse, chorus, solo to be a formula.
I do consider that as a formula. That's absolutely a formula.
I mean, we'll get to that in one of the later songs.
But there are several songs that don't even really have choruses. They just have riffs instead of choruses. And so I think there's enough variety, and each song has a distinct vibe that separates it from the other. So if it was like an AC/DC album, where it's just like, here's just 10 kick-ass rock songs.
They're all the same song?
I could see you saying that's following a formula, but this, like, you've got, you know, shuffles, you've got tender ballads, you've got these Celtic marches, you've got just these badass riff rockers, you've got stuff with a bit more swing. Like, to say that this is all following one formula, I don't see that at all.
Okay.
I think you find much more formula on records post the late 80s. You know, I go back to this reference all the time, and it probably pisses off Metallica fans, but I'll say it again. Metallica would never do a song like this, even if they wanted to, because it's you know, back a band like Thin Lizzy in the 70s could do a song like Jailbreak, they could do a song like Warrior, and they could do a song like this, and nobody said these guys are wimps. You know, now bands are so much, artists, bands, they're so locked into a very narrow range of what they're allowed to get away with, whether it's because of what they're afraid of what their fans are going to think. I don't know why.
Well, can I counter
basically, that? Well, go ahead.
So I didn't want to interrupt you. Sorry, but
you did.
But I did. I didn't want to.
Okay.
But
I don't want to, but I must.
No, I'm just because you're comparing them to Metallica. I think when you set yourself up to be this really macho, if anytime you're doing metal, if you try to do something softer, yeah, it's not going to go over well. So a band like Thin Lizzy, or that's just on the rock spectrum, I think that they can a lot more easily get away with that. But
also, I think what's brilliant about Thin Lizzy is that this is like a perfect band. When I think of like masculinity done right, it is 100% Thin Lizzy. Like, this is what I want from a masculine artist, because it taps into the different sides of the male psyche so well in a way that I consider like respectable and clever and heartfelt. Just, you know, because it is part of the male psyche to have swagger and be ready to throw down and beat up somebody. But it is also part of the male psyche to have this longing and heartbreak. And so a band like Metallica seems more fake to me than a band like Thin Lizzy. Like, I feel authenticity and sincerity from this band where I wouldn't feel that from some other artists.
Well, it's the willingness to venture outside of your wheelhouse and to have a fan base that will follow you wherever you go. It breaks my heart a little bit that there was that change. I mean, back in the day, there was no Metallica in 1976. This was about as hard rock in a band as you would find at the time. So, you know, you listen to a lot of the bands from that era, and there is a lot of variety of material on the records. Going back to the Beatles could do Helter Skelter and Good Night and Blackbird all on the same album. And that was, at the time, that was a lot of bands shot for that. They shot for being broader. Whereas now, you know, you can't just be metal. You have to be black death metal. You know, you have to carve yourself a narrower and narrower niche. I'm not really sure why that is, but I just think that it leaves you so much less room to grow and to express something other than one sentiment or one note or one flavor.
I think there's a lot more music, so you have to like pick out the narrow niche of what to get those fans initially.
There's more music, but the many bands do less of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They pick a niche and they drill deeper and deeper into that particular niche where things were broader and just had more flavors. It was a smorgasbord.
Yeah.
You know, now you can get any color you want as long as it's black.
But I think just the fact that there are way more musicians who are able to enter the sphere and create some kind of music that like if you want to deviate from whatever niche you're shooting for, odds are good there's somebody else already in that alternate niche that you would jump into doing it better.
Absolutely. That comes back to the Smashing Pumpkins conversation we had where they were like, there was a couple people saying, I don't really like when they were trying to experiment with these different type of genres because there's 100 other bands that do that better. So that's the exact same thing you're describing. Like, if you're going to try to do something else, if you're not going to be the best of it when you have thousands of other groups to compare it to, it's going to be tough.
But here's the difference. This song is amazing and brilliant and perfect. Like, Lizzy, for me, succeeds pretty much all the time. Like, this is a knockout just right out of the park. Like, to see it ranked at the bottom just breaks my heart because I just adore this song so much. So freaking good.
But aren't you going to say that about every single song on this record?
There's a couple where I'm not. I mean, I'm still going to like they're not S rank. They're like A+. This is S rank. This is above A+. Like this is above perfection. But this is a band with just such a knockout catalog. Like I thought of one of the podcast ideas I considered doing was a Pot of Thunder style show with the Thin Lizzy catalog. The problem is there's not as much shit in the Thin Lizzy catalog to make fun of. Like with Kiss, there's a lot of shitty cuts, and I love Kiss. But with Thin Lizzy, like the quality is more consistent, and so it'd be harder to make fun of the songs because they're just so good.
Yeah, nobody wants to listen to somebody just raving about something.
Right, because that's
boring.
Sorry.
Things that are good aren't...
So, Brad, how's your podcast going?
Brad's podcast is great, sir, because he dives into like the specific, I think with Pot of Thunder, that's, part of the appeal of the show is how comedic it is and the laughing at the ridiculousness of some of the songs they're listening to. But they do get, well into like when they get into a good song describing why it's great, and I think Brad does that great on his show as well. So both shows are great, but I think it'd be like if we did a random song genre with Thin Lizzy, it would be like, oh, look, we got this song. This is great. We're all really happy, and that'd be every episode.
I would still find jokes to say about Thin Lizzy songs, Greg.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I think you're selling your co-host Steve's short here. I think I can already tell.
You underestimate our snark.
I can already tell that these guys would love to be flies in the ointment on that show. So
that's true. They would bring me down. Like every episode, I would try to go for good, real good. They're like, nope, straight to hell.
Oh wait, I have that drop.
Yeah, and from my standpoint here, Lord knows I hate to agree with a millennial, but
we're really the worst.
Yeah, no,
I
agree
industries.
I agree with you there as well. So we're actually agreeing on a lot of things so far. But this was the bottom of my list for this album, and before I explain why, let me just say that I don't dislike any song on this album, but something had to be at the bottom. It's kind of when people freak out when they learn that Zeppelin 4 and Houses of the Holy are in my bottom 3 Led Zeppelin albums, and I'm like, well, it's not like I dislike them, but something has to be in the bottom 3, and those two are. So this song for me, I think Millennial Steve actually nailed it. It's
I mean,
just
there's two
kind
millennial
of
Steves.
We were literally born within, 10 days of each
Yeah,
other?
we have a 10-day gap.
well, the guy who just seems to wear it more proudly on his sleeve, the guy who walked in at the last minute.
Hey!
We'll refer to him as Millennial Steve.
Oh my god.
I agree with him in that my main issue with this song is it's just kind of lacking in energy compared to everything else on the album. It's a little listless. I think the saxophone, people know I love saxophone in my music, seems to be tossed in as an afterthought.
Disagree, sir. Disagree.
Where was the... I don't
remember
notice
a saxophone.
I remember
It was so classy, and I just
That tells you how good it was. I don't even remember it existing.
I remember
There is a
you just listened to it like a couple of days ago. You're fresh on this.
Well, I should know it then, right?
There is a saxophone in there. It's uncredited. I have no idea who played it. The keyboards are also uncredited. It was a guy named Tim Hinckley.
That's what Wikipedia says, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know what type of keyboard that was?
I believe it's an electric piano, so it's probably a Fender Rhodes or something like that.
I'm sorry, Chris, you were saying?
Yeah, we interrupted you.
Yeah. No, it's fine. It's fine. It's just, and again, the keyboard part, I mean, it's got a nice hook, but it's a tad basic. The execution is a little basic for me. But really what I'm trying to do is just find things to point out as to why it was at the bottom of my list. Again, I like this song. I like every song on this album. I tend to agree with Greg that there are very few stinkers in this Thin Lizzy catalog, but that's why it's at the bottom of my list for this album.
It was the bottom of my list as well. I like the song. I just don't love it. My biggest gripe with it is that keyboard riff, it's really repetitive. And I can't believe they hired a studio guy to come in and go plank, 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 plank. I mean, probably anyone could have played that. But it's not a bad track.
My heart just keeps getting broken over here.
I liked the keyboard part, Greg. I thought that was a good touch. Added a bit more sonic variety to the album overall. It's one of those things I assume I probably would have gotten pretty annoyed with it if they'd had it on every song, but just having it on this one song was a nice little touch to make it stick out a little bit. Overall, I think this, to echo what other Steve said, the song, I think, is a little flat overall. It doesn't have... It's a fine song, but it doesn't have as much movement, as much variety as the other ones do.
I'll concede it doesn't have as much movement or variety. It is a pretty basic, simple shuffle. But I think just the heartfelt sincerity of those lyrics and that melody, combined with me enjoying the hook, enjoying that kind of groove, being a huge saxophone nerd myself, just it hit all the right markers for me and is, helps define why I love the band so much. And for me, it's a standout cut on the album. And it often will make playlists when I'm not listening to the entire album, but I'm just picking random Lizzy cuts for a playlist. This one often makes the playlist, so I adore this track. All right, well, next up on the list, we have Fight or Fall.
Yeah, this is exactly where I put it. This one, I liked the outro, and I liked the telling myself back and forth part with the panning. That was a neat effect, but otherwise, this is a somewhat forgettable song. It's fine. It's not amazing.
I think it's I did rank this at the bottom of my list personally. Like Chris said, something has to come at the bottom, and I think just it's still an amazing song, but there's other songs on this album that are just simply better. I do like the panning. I like the hooks. I like the lyrics quite a bit. I do like the end of the song where there's a callback to a previous Thin Lizzy song, Fighting My Way Back, where Phil says, fighting! So, that's very cool if you're a big Thin Lizzy fan and know the catalog like the rest of us. It's a great tune and helps sort of play into the vague story of the album, where it's a very lazy, half-assed concept album, supposedly, by some standards. I don't consider this one to be nearly as much of a concept album as maybe Johnny the Fox, where they claim both Jailbreak and Johnny the Fox are concept albums, and I buy it more from Johnny the Fox than from Jailbreak. But if you were trying to construe some kind of narrative, the song fits well within it in terms of, the rebellious Irish aliens fighting against their space overlords to claim back the Emerald Isle. Works fine in that context, I guess.
Wait, are you
Is that what it's supposed to be about?
Are you going to tell me that the plot of Jailbreak is Battlefield Earth?
Yes, but for Ireland.
All right, instead of Scotland.
Right.
So this record's about Scientology, after all. I knew it. All right, that's cool.
You're like listening to this, and you're like, something tells me that he hates psychology.
Yeah.
There is a blurb on the back of the original album that sort of lays out this pseudo concept. I debated whether or not I should read it, but it's really long, and it pretty much has nothing to do with the record, really.
But you should love this, Steve. It's about aliens.
I do love aliens.
I like
It maybe ties into like 2 or 2.5 songs of the record, but there's really no stream or theme that goes through the entire record. It was just the era of concept records, and I just thought it would be kind of cool if they had a story that maybe they could wedge some of these things in, but I don't really think it sizes up.
Battlefield Earth had been based off of this album, then?
It did come out 6
It would have
years later.
been much better.
Oh. But it's possible, yeah, because it's later. So maybe everything is all a circle for you, Greg.
I think the trick with calling this a concept album is that Thin Lizzy songs tend to be fairly narrative as it is. Like, most of their songs have a distinct story to them. And
Right.
in an album like this, they're fairly individual episodic stories that don't connect to each other. They're just the story of, a guy being lonely, a guy pining after a girl, a guy being a cowboy and being lonely. They don't
It's the
connect
same
to
guy
each other.
being lonely.
It's the same guy. It's just, one day he's in Ireland, like, invading things and burning them down. The next day he's a cowboy.
A space cowboy, because this takes place in outer space.
I mean, he talks about Mexico an awful lot.
Space Mexico.
Space
Yeah.
Mexico.
Didn't you watch G Gundam, dude?
Dude,
Yeah,
that's going to be a big wall if we have to...
yeah, right. Build that wall.
We're going
so
to build
Yeah.
a Dyson Sphere, and Space Mexico's going to pay for it.
All right, so I'm going to toss this out there real quick since that got brought up. One of my favorite things about Thin Lizzy, in particular Thin Lizzy fans, because you have Phil Lynott as this amazing, engaging frontman who really is the heart and soul of the band. I love that diehard Thin Lizzy fans, like, being a Thin Lizzy fan, like, weeds out the racists of your fan base pretty quickly. Like, there are a lot of other rock bands where I like them a lot, but a lot of their fans are absolutely terrible. But everyone I know who's a big Thin Lizzy fan, like, they all tend to be pretty cool dudes, well-rounded in their musical tastes. And that's not to say if you don't like Thin Lizzy, you're a bad
just
person or a
terrible
racist.
piece of shit.
But I do like that this weeds out the racists from the hard rock crowd and just leaves you with just a group of genuinely cool people.
You never meet anyone who's like, my favorite 2 bands are Thin Lizzy and Screwdriver.
Right.
I don't really know anything about Thin Lizzy on a personal level, so why do you say that? Is it one of their members...
So
Phil Lynott was black.
Phil
Okay.
Lynott was half black, half Irish.
Okay.
And basically like the only black dude in Ireland. Like, dude was, like, when I think of, like, the epitome of, like, a main character in a story, Phil Lynott is such a main character kind of human being, just all the adventures he went on, just my all-time favorite rock star. When I think of a rock star, Phil Lynott is definitely my favorite.
So, with the art direction of this band, I often wonder how much effort was put into just somewhat obfuscating Phil Lynott's race in photography and things like that. Like, the cover of this album, like, you can't really see anybody's skin at all.
No,
So, like,
I had no idea.
yeah, you can't tell that. The live album that we were talking about before, like, the color, it's straight up a shot of Phil Lynott, but the color is super blown out. So if you know that he's, a black man, you can sort of see that. But if you didn't know any better, you're just like, I don't know, it's just like bad lighting, and who knows what color his skin is.
Well, but I think, the fans, once they bothered to buy the album and looked at the other pictures inside the booklet, they figured it out. But
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. But I wonder if that was an intentional decision in some of their art direction, just because, hard rock fans, are often a little bit racist. I wonder if that was an intentional decision, just put that a little bit in the background so people don't notice it first.
That would be more of a record company thing.
Oh, yeah.
I think we often overestimate the control that artists have over their album covers, which is probably why we've had so many terrible album covers over the years. There were some of the early records, like Fighting is the first one that comes to mind, that it's just your classic band shot on the cover where Phil is obviously a black guy.
Yeah.
How these records were issued in the States, who made the decision as to what the cover art was. I'm sure the band didn't have a lot of control over that one way or the other. Not saying it wasn't a factor. I'm just saying I don't think the band ever made any effort to hide that.
I'm sure that's not this sort of decision where Phil was like, "Hold on, guys, we need to hide my face so that people don't judge us." But I can picture a record label having made that decision.
Sure.
So yeah, back to Fight or Fall.
I'm pretty much right there with Steve number 1, OG Steve.
Oh no!
That'll teach you to be born 10 days later, Steve.
No, I disagree with this
you're Steve
ranking
number 2.
of Steves. Next time we're gonna have a podcast where we just rank the Steves, and it's gonna be just me on it. All right.
I had this at number 8 on my list, second from the bottom. I like the Telling Myself echoes. That was kind of cool. Really tasteful guitar solo in this track. Shades of Marvin Gaye in this one. I think Running Back was Phil kind of doing his Van Morrison thing. At the time, this is pre-U2, so Van Morrison was really the number one rock star from Ireland. But on this track, I think he's echoing a little bit of the Marvin Gaye approach. But it's, it's not a bad track, but not a standout for me.
Chris, how about you? You ranked this a bit higher than the rest of us.
I did. I had it, where did I have it? I had it at 3. And the main reason for that is sentimental reasons. Back in the early 90s, when I was playing in a original band in the Chicago scene, one of our peer bands called the Young Lords were asked to appear on a locally produced Thin Lizzy tribute album, and they chose this song. And I thought it was a great choice. Not one you would expect from them, given what their style was, which was a little heavier. But they did a great job with it, and it gave me a new appreciation for the song. And every time I hear it, I think back to what were my proverbial salad days of playing music and thinking that I and all my friends were going to be worldwide rock stars. So that's what it reminds me of, and that's why I rank it so highly. I agree with Brad. I when I hear the brother bit, I get a Marvin Gaye connection to what's going on, which is never a bad thing.
Yep.
And to me, it's, this is the kind of sort of glimpse into Phil's sensitive side that really connects with me. And I also agree with Brad about the guitar solo. Generally, when it's ultra tasteful, you're getting it from Gorham. When it's the sound of someone pulling their dick out and waving around in your face, you're getting that from Robbo. That's why I prefer Robbo slightly over him. But rest with that. But Gorham had he's a laid back California guy, and it just comes through in his approach to solos. Dancing in the Moonlight, incredibly tasteful. Everybody loves that one. This is in that vein. And again, just for me, sentimental reasons, I rank it very highly.
I mean, yeah, it's a great tune. Sort of the problem I have with this song is that it ranks lower for me in terms of the overall catalog of the band, but that's because the catalog is just so freaking strong. So yeah,
Exactly. I mean, you have to rank these things. That's the format of the show, and something's got to be at the bottom. But
Right.
Unlike a lot of other bands or other discussions, you're not putting it there because you don't like it. You're putting it there because that's what we're asked to do. So.
Greg actually ranked every song number 1. So.
Yeah, that threw off
sounds
the map
like
for
Greg.
everything.
Yeah. I'm getting that impression. So
One of these days, somebody's finally going to say spontaneously, something's got to rank at the top. We haven't hit that day yet. We've gotten one something's got to rank in the middle, and lots of something's got to rank at the bottom.
Can we go back in time when we did the Gene Simmons record? And I'll say that because they were all number last for me.
Look, man, Mr. Make Believe is a great song. It's a fantastic cut.
Jesus. Here comes Hot Take Troyan.
Look, I enjoy the Beatlesy songs from Gene Simmons on that
I don't
album.
want to talk about the Gene Simmons solo album, please.
That's the only thing I ever want to talk about.
Do you want to talk about The Elder?
I do not. I think, we're going down some dangerous roads.
We are here
I think
to
we
talk
should
about-
stay on focus. And,
Stay focused.
We're here to talk about
Focus.
Phil Lynot's dick, not Gene Simmons's.
That's right.
Speaking of which, since you brought that up, I have a question.
I'm almost afraid to ask, but go ahead.
Well, I'm going to ask it. You can be afraid to answer, but
Okay.
here it comes. He's half black, half Irish. Did he have a tiny dick or a huge dick or somewhere in between? Just throwing that out there.
You know what? I feel
Something to
like Phil Lynott is the epitome of big dick swagger. Is that the expression?
Big dick energy.
Big dick
Big dick
energy.
energy.
Yeah, no, this is a man full of big dick energy. So I'm gonna say, dude was huge.
Yeah, but those are metaphorical big dicks.
But I think that given the constant surrounding of attractive women that dude had, like, word spreads fast. And if he was not delivering the goods, as the Judas Priest song says, it wouldn't last. No, Phil Lynott definitely inherited that from his dad.
That's not... When you're a rock star, it doesn't matter how big you are.
That's right. I was just going to
What
say,
the
when
heck
you're a
was
rock
that?
star, it doesn't matter.
More like big
You're
wallet
gonna-
energy, am I right?
You're going to get it anyway.
Plus, as you observed so astutely, it's like he had that perfect balance of rock star swagger and kind of that sensitive guy mode. The sensitive guy mode will take you a long way with the opposite sex. Absolutely. So, anyway, just something to ponder because you base two sides of the spectrum of the stereotypical length of dick associated with ethnicity. So, I don't know.
I'll be thinking about that as we continue the podcast.
These are just the huge important questions that I spend my energy thinking about.
This is what's on my mind.
Yes.
So the trick is, Phil Lynott said, does anybody have any Irish in them? Would they like to have a little more Irish, not a lot more Irish?
Ooh, that's a good counterpoint.
Well, that could be a just the tip approach to it, So, anyway, this is probably a worse hijack than the Gene Simmons album.
It
So
definitely
get
is.
back.
We are so far off the rails.
I really wish the Nets song was a great transition track, but it isn't. Next up is Warriors.
Yeah, this is my last one. Yeah.
All right, so Steve, you just don't like to rock.
Oh, yeah, I hate rock music. No, I just...
I think it's important to talk about your musical background in the context
No, it's
of
not.
this.
It doesn't matter what I
Well,
like.
okay, so you're into pop punk
Yeah.
as your favorite thing, which is usually simple chords. This is riff rock.
Yeah, this
is badass riffing.
the riffs are fine. It just goes on and on. Like, even though it's a short song, I was just like, all right, dude. That's just... No, it was... Yeah. There's a lot of... the first half of the song, to me, is pretty cool. The second half, they lose me.
Oh, see, the second half, when you start to get, the choir in the background and it gets all transcendent, see, I think that part is fantastic. But also, man, these riffs, these are some nasty badass, kick-ass rock and roll riffs that are sort of the epitome of just great riff rock. Like Gorham and Robbo just teaming up and just nailing this. There's a reason why this is a huge album for guitar nerds and why guitar nerds love Thin Lizzy, because these are some of the most potent riffs in the history of rock music. And yeah, I ranked this second from the bottom, and I think
Then what are you doing?
I love all these songs. But so the reason why I ranked this one a little bit lower is this sort of falls into one of the many Thin Lizzy categories. They have different categories of songs, and this fits into their I would call it the battle category. So songs like this, Emerald, Massacre off Johnny the Fox, Genocide, Killing of the Buffalo off of Chinatown. They have these battle epics with a little bit of the Celtic groove and just this really aggressive riffs, and a lot of them don't really have choruses. Instead of a chorus, they just go back to the riff. And as a pop guy, I tend to prefer a big sing-along chorus. And as far as Thin Lizzy battle songs go, this is one of the weaker ones, but it's weaker in a great catalog.
We'll say that if anything else that I listened to on this this collection of songs, this is definitely the most Jimi Hendrix-ish one, for sure. That's just how the vocals sound to me. And I do think the choir thing is cool at the end. There's some cool components. It's just, I don't know, it doesn't, this is going to seem completely opposite to what I said earlier, because I was going on about how the other song to me was boring because it was all the same. This one doesn't seem to really know what it wants to be, I guess, is my main issue with it.
It's a battle epic. It's about being a warrior.
See, we were talking earlier about, songs being a little bit formulaic. This one is the one that's formulaic to me. I'll put it somewhere in the middle. I did like that, build back in with the chorus, but the solo especially, the solo of this song comes up and it's just they put a solo there because that was what was supposed to go next, but the solo itself doesn't have anything going for it. Just really
absolute madness.
Underwhelming solo.
I love the guitar solo in this song.
Yeah,
It's a
you're
great,
fucking crazy.
He is
Brian
You've gone
Robertson.
too far with that.
Brian Robertson
Go
is
ahead,
one of the.
Brad.
Yeah, I'm just saying Robertson is one of the all-time great users of the wah-wah pedal.
Oh, thank you, sir.
He just
what about Kirk?
knocks it out of the park on
Educate
this one, I
these
think.
punks.
hey, remember, I'm on your side, Chris.
No, I'm going after Steve O.G. with this tirade right now. Brad is totally right. When Millennial Steve brought up Jimi Hendrix, I thought he was going to start speaking of the guitar solo.
Nah.
Mainly because most people associate Hendrix with as the king user of the wah pedal. He was probably the first guy to really take it to the next level in terms of its use. But to me, Brian Robertson is the best wah pedal user of all time. He's my favorite rock guitarist of all time. Small body of work, but boy, what he did with it was incredible. Guitar solo is great. I had this in the middle of the pack. And again, because just there's other songs on the album I like better, but I really I love the guitar solo mostly, and just kind of the attitude and swagger, and like Greg observed, just the riffs that are included are pretty top quality in my opinion.
And, as we're talking about Brian Robertson, I want to give a brief shout-out to basically all of the guitarists in Lizzy, because I think that every guitarist in Lizzy has been great and brought their own unique flair to the band. And I'm mainly talking about the guys who recorded on the albums with Phil. So I'm not talking about everyone who joined in, the post-Phil lineups. They're all competent players, but I'm talking about the ones who played on the albums. I think... Yep. The fact that you had all these different players with different styles and they were able to work well speaks to the quality of them as players and with Phil's songwriting. So Eric Bell is a much simpler guitar player than anyone else in the band, but the rocker is one of the band's best cuts. And, he played on so many great cuts with them. Gary Moore, guitar legend. John Sykes, great. A lot of people say Snowy White was the wrong fit for the band, and he was, but the albums he played on were great. He brought in some really interesting musical contributions. And obviously, Scott Gorham and Brian Robertson, the classic lineup, both of them brought so many great things to the band. I would say out of all the guitar players in Lizzy, as we're singing Brian Robertson's praises, and he is fantastic, I think Scott is my favorite in the sense that he was just a solid foundation for the band, and I really respect loyalty with band members and like friends who stick up for their friends. And so the fact that Scott was with Phil through thick and thin as all the other people came and went speaks to the quality of him as a person and also his great playing. Just a fantastic group of musicians in this band's history. So just wanted to give a little shout out to all the great players, and Brian Downey, my favorite rock drummer of all time. Just phenomenal musician. And you know what? Darren Warden. I didn't really like his keyboard bits, but he seems like a nice guy.
I think of all the players that came in and out and back again and out again of Thin Lizzy, and their guitar player history is fascinating. I think easily Robertson and Gorham were the two most closely matched in terms of style.
You're saying that Sykes and Gorham wasn't the perfect combo?
I think they're great, but I think that the similarities between I just think they were very evenly matched, and yet they had their different strengths as well, and that's what made them, I think, a better team. Thin Lizzy. And you're right, Gorham is, I think, crucially important because when Eric Bell left the band and Gorham came in, their sound drastically changed, and that really became the Thin Lizzy that I think most people know and love. And it was Gorham coming into the band that I think made that happen. Other guitarists came in and out after that, but that blend of Scott and Phil, I think, really made something kind of magical happen there. But I think when you had Robertson and Gorham playing together, that twin guitar thing really came into its own then. They weren't the first people to do it. I think generally Wishbone Ash is the band that is a lot of people cite as being really the first band to kind of break the mold of rhythm player, lead player, and kind of have two really strong lead players doing a lot of that dual lead work. But for me, just Thin Lizzy had much better material, frankly, just better songs. And they applied the twin guitar thing more judiciously, not as over the top as, say, a band like Leonard Skinner. I think it's much more tasteful the way Lizzy would do it. But just the pair of those two guys, I think it's the all-time greatest pair of two sort of like-minded, similar in style guitar players in a band.
I don't know. The Paul Stanley Vinnie Vincent combo was pretty great.
I guess that's supposed to be a joke.
That was a joke.
Next song.
Moving on.
All right, so
hot take Troy and it's on his game today.
In fairness, that one was a joke. I don't.
Yeah,
one.
It goes along with your hot take persona. So.
Tepid take Troyan.
I mean, at least most of my hot takes are actually sincerely held beliefs.
That makes it worse, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
It kind of does.
Okay.
Oh, a couple additional things about Warrior. It's the first song we've talked about that's a co-write between Lynott and Scott Gorham. And Phil, this is a quote from Phil. When I wrote Warriors, the only way I could give any sense of heavy drug takers was by describing them as warriors. They actually go out and do it. So this, you don't really get it from the lyrics, but he's kind of equating warriors to being junkies, which, kind of charts the path of Phil's life, unfortunately.
Yeah, Phil is just, he really fits, unfortunately, well into the tragic rock star persona, crippled by his addictions. But I think just the reason I resonate with him so much is that he puts a lot of it out there. and just, really lets you dive into his soul. And it's, it is an absolute shame, he was gone too soon. I've been lately listening to a lot of unreleased Phil Lynott demos from shortly before his death. And there's just all these amazing, great songs. And, it's a shame to hear them in these, poor demo quality uploaded to YouTube and just, all the compression. But there's so many great songs. It's just a shame to, have him gone from us so soon with their, I think I've listened to maybe 100 unreleased Lizzy tracks or Phil tracks. And they've all been so great. And it's just an absolute bummer for me to have him, just gone before I existed.
Gone before your time.
Yes. All right, next up on the list, another great song from this album, as all of them are.
I feel like you're just sort of being repetitive at this point. Like, another great song from this album.
Right,
They're all from this album.
But I would say this is another song that sort of
It's from a different album.
No, this is another song that defines Jailbreak as an album for me. So a great album cut. We have "Angel from the Coast" next on the list.
I like this one a lot. I put the second from the top. So I don't think I'd actually heard this one prior to this week.
You have. You've driven with me.
Okay, it's distinctly possible. I don't know, this one's... No, yeah, this is like track 2. So yeah, I've probably heard it, but I hadn't listened to it intentionally. But this one's, got one of the more interesting stories on the album. And, I tend to like the harder rocking songs more than the slower ballady songs.
Yeah, this song, I remember the first time I heard it, I knew I was in for a great album, because obviously I'd heard Jailbreak before, the song. But this was the first new song I heard listening to the album, a song I was unfamiliar with, and just the sweet riff that kicks in right away, and you've got, as we were talking about the greatness of this, dual guitar lineup of, Gorham and Robertson playing off each other very well, rocking very hard, Downey just providing a very driving, awesome beat, very poetic, cool lyrics from Phil, where you're like, wow, this, the song is saying something. This is just a great, cool tune. It's fantastic.
If you were to try to convince me that this album was a concept album, this is one of the songs that I would buy being part of it.
Yes, this definitely fits.
This is definitely like the middle of a story that it doesn't resolve. It doesn't. It doesn't finish up the story.
Got
it's
away.
Just like there was a gunfight and the bad guy got away. What's going to happen next? Who knows?
A lot of Phil's lyrics are like that when he's telling a story. He's not telling you the whole thing. He's picking, it's a scene. He's writing about scenes. I love this track. To me, this is kind of the hidden gem of the record. It's a great funky riff. I love the guitar riff in it. I love about not quite 2 minutes into the song where they kind of changed up the riff a little bit, just kind of extra seasoning on there.
Oh, and man, those harmonies.
Just a great track.
Oh, man.
Extra seasoning.
Yeah, and Downey's drums are great. Probably my favorite drumming on the record. Interesting ending. I'm not sure if they just didn't know how to end it and ended it that way, but it's cool. But I love this track.
I think that ending is great because it leaves you wanting more. Like, wait, what happens next? And just
it just sort of like
ends. It's like to be continued in the next scene, and you're just like, so good. I'm sorry,
it's
I have
really
a lot of
abrupt
hype.
ending.
I like this band a lot, as I mentioned on previous episodes.
And several times this episode.
Yes.
And next episode.
I'm not sure. I'm not convinced. He needs to really...
I need to sell it more.
Yeah, you need to really go for it.
You need to emote. I love this band.
Christo, what's your take on this one?
Let's see. I had it second from the bottom, again, for reasons stated earlier. Something had to be there. I basically ranked the song in order of which ones I would most like to listen to, and then they kind of fell into place from top to bottom. This was second from the last, but I pretty much agree with what everyone has said. The energy is great. The storytelling is great. This is an example of the type of song and the type of lyrics that inspire me to refer to Phil as the Irish Bruce Springsteen. I think you
That's a
can
fair
draw a
assessment.
lot of comparisons there in terms of, the storytelling, the champion of the regular guy type thing, the blend of machismo and sensitivity, all that stuff. This is a great example of it. And again, nothing not to like, just I would rather listen to the other 7 tracks on the album that I ranked higher than this one. But again, nothing wrong with it for me.
And, I love your comment about the Irish Bruce Springsteen thing because, there is a lot of similarities between Thin Lizzy and Bruce Springsteen. It has that heartland rock, working class feel to it. And I think one of the reasons why the band resonates so well with me is I really like those lyrical things, coming from Cleveland, Ohio, very similar to Detroit in a lot of ways. So a lot of those same lyrical themes resonate with me a lot. And so I like Bruce Springsteen, but I just want him to rock a little bit more. And that's why Thin Lizzy is great. It's like, what if Bruce Springsteen just kicked a little bit more ass? There you go.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. I'm kind of coming around to Springsteen as I get older. There's a lot of stuff in his catalog that's absolutely great, but I'm with you. I just need the little extra hard rock approach, heaviness to it, and you get that from Thin Lizzy. So when you got Thin Lizzy, I don't really feel the need to listen to much Springsteen. So
I still love Springsteen, but I think that's one of the reasons I love Lizzy so much is they're that perfect sweet spot of everything I want from a band. They've got the macho swagger, they've got the sensitivity, they've got the rockin' riffs, they've got ballads, they've got saxophone. The only thing that they don't really do is get weird, over the top, glammy, operatic. But I'm fine with that. Queen exists, so I don't really need that from Thin Lizzy. But there's even Little Darling. It's like a old single of theirs, and that has some glam affectations with just the heavy brass. Similar to what T-Rex was doing at the time. So even they got a little taste of the glam in there. We're just damn, Thin Lizzy, you hit every single mark for me. Everything I want, you're doing and doing so well. And so this is what I think of as just an ideal rock band, because you get those Bruce Springsteen type lyrics, but you also get just the bitchin' riffs too. Everything that I want is there.
So what's Millennial Steve think of this cut?
Oh, I don't have anything to add.
He doesn't like to rock.
It's fine. I don't have anything that's different than what anybody else has said. Yeah, it's fine.
All right. Well, next up on the list, there's a song that Millennial Steve liked a lot.